Hey, welcome back. Android development time. We last left off with an impossible challenge. One of the hardest things to do on the Android ecosystem. I'm kidding, it's easy, it's just asinine. But one of the funniest challenges I could come up with, how do you make the buttons a perfect square? I didn't see any submissions on Canvas, so if you have any submissions now, post them to either chat. How do we make these darn buttons square? Infuriating. I have an array of material buttons. I want to make sure that they're perfectly square. Perfectly square. I won't settle for somewhat square. I demand perfect squareness. Get my phone's window open. Today we're going to finish up with Tic Tac Toe. Let me take a little survey as well of where everybody's at in the CS program. So I want to know if you've completed 129, formerly known as 228, if you've also finished 328, or if you're currently in 328. If you're other and you don't mind sharing how that works, let me know. It's a weird state to be in. So those of you who have only finished 129/228, same class, different name, and or you're currently in 328 but you haven't finished it, consider grouping up for the major project, because a lot of this is obviously pretty confusing to you. It's probably pretty confusing to the 328 people too. It's just confusing in general. Okay, so let's just try to address the easiest possible one. No one even tried to guess this, right? It would be too simple, wouldn't it? Buttons of I dot width, and then we want to set it to something. Let's say it was 50 pixels. Buttons of I dot, why do I have extra brackets? Buttons of I dot height. I'm gonna set it. Set height. That couldn't possibly work, could it? Let's try. Try that out. Just to get my first build for the day over. I also didn't post this as a challenge, but I did posit the question, how do we get the size of the screen in Android? Android, get the size of the screen. Let's see what that search result returns. Android, get the size of the screen. So I got something from 2017, as is tradition. It wants me to use display metrics. Let's use display metrics. Let's see if my app finished loading. Ah, no dice, huh? That was just, that was a throwaway. The reason I wanted to show you guys this is to show you a follow-up piece of silliness. Let me pull it up from my notes here. Something I noted that was pretty hilarious in my opinion. Buttons of I dot get height. Okay. What should that be? In either chat, let me know. What do you think buttons of I dot get height should print here? Buttons of I dot get height. What should it print here? Seems pretty obvious, doesn't it? So let's hit up logcat, run this and find out. What do we get here? I'm gonna sort by height. 0 and 0. Okay. Many questions, right? First of all, how come it only printed twice? Where's the other 7 buttons? The buttons array is 9 items long, and I assure you, No typos here. It really is 9 items long. So how come it only printed twice? Second, how come it's 0? Hover over the description for get height. Return the height of your view. Seems pretty straightforward. No further details there. Don't really have an answer for you on the second one. I don't know why it returns 0. I think that they inherited from Java libraries many moons ago, and those tend to return 0 in the constructor. I think the same thing happens here, that in the onCreate method, getHeight tends to return 0, but I'm not sure about that. The answer to the second question is that logcat will actually filter out messages it thinks are spam. So if it sees the same message a bunch of times, it'll just cut it off, which can be really annoying if you're debugging something by printing a certain number of statements. So if you want it to actually show all 9, you have to make sure they're different. So by the addition of I here, I've now made every iteration print something slightly different, and now I will actually get all 9 of the printouts. So that's a logcat feature. I don't think you can turn that off, but you probably can now that I think about it, considering how customizable everything is. So just be aware, if you're trying to print out the same statement a bunch of times, it might cut you off. But this was wrong, and this is a quirk that you should be aware of because it can be annoying for you. Back to my how to get the size of the screen here. So I said, yeah, this person didn't get it right. This person says, get window manager.get default display and then create a point. Weird. This one wants you to use a window manager, and it wants you to use context.get system service. Weird. Resources.get system.get display metrics with pixels, height pixels. This guy seems to know what's up. Let's try him out. I'm going to need this in order to properly set the size of the screen. Alright, resources imported properly. And let's take a look at what that resources looks like. So remember last time we made Game Manager, and it was a singleton. It had that get instance thing. And I said, get familiar with this pattern because there's a ton of these in Android. This is an example. So resources is the class that contains all sorts of fun utilities for resources. And then you've got get system, which returns a global shared resource object that provides access only to system resources, is not configured for the current screen, is not affected by runtime resource overlay, whatever that means. So this is basically another example of that singleton thing. It's global, it's shared, there's only one of them. Anytime you want to access the system, you just call get system rather than in creating a new one or anything like that. So the concept of creating a new system object, kind of moot. If you wanted a system object, you would always call get system. Likewise, get display metrics. You've got a system, you're always going to call get display metrics on it. You can actually make your own display metrics, so this is not totally a one-to-one example. But if you're looking for the system's display metrics or the screen's display metrics, you're always going to call get display metrics on get system. So this is like almost like a double singleton, like resources get system, then get display metrics, and then width pixels, height pixels. Let's see if this gives me the correct result. Dimensions. We'll go with width. Height. Let's see if I get the right results. If you see from my console window here for the phone, 720 by 1600, so see if that's accurate. I spelled dimensions wrong. So 720 by 1501. Alright, weird, right? Why is it an odd number? Well, the top, right? Everything beyond this point is reserved, and I got some reserved space on the bottom. I'm not sure if that actually counts as reserved in the OnePlus operating system, or if you can actually render things down there. But you can't render things up here, for sure, in the notifications bar. So the real size of the display is actually slightly smaller. So if you had used, let's say you did know your device's resolution, you had used it, you would probably not end up being precisely accurate because the display is actually slightly shorter than you think. Let's spell that correctly. Alright, so let's say that I want the buttons to be set to, I don't know, like the width over 6 or something. It probably does the trick. Let's call it int size equals width over, let's go 5. And I want to set both the buttons to that size instead. So this didn't work. Continuing on the Android challenge. I'll give the answer away for this one if we don't get it by the end of the day. How do we make them square? And that didn't work. Okay, so we had left off with, we created this singleton guy, we had a getInstance method for accessing him, we had the winner, we had that kind of stuff, we had the ability to set a tile and move on to the next turn, we had getTurn, checkWinner, we have the ability to reset the game, we have the ability to check who won the game, and this also executes all of the win checking for the columns and the rows and everything. I just pasted that in. Everyone, let's see, I'm going to take a poll if everyone gets how the Tic Tac Toe works. The only thing we needed to add back to our user interface element was the ability to set that text. That text up here to whose turn it is, because right now it doesn't change. And then we wanted the win functionality when somebody actually gets 3 in a row. So this doesn't say that you win. We wanted actually to say that you win once you've won. So let's do that up real quick. We have the, everybody gets the game manager, so let's go and do that. So the reset already works, and the clicking of all the different buttons works. So we know that we're going to have to execute the win checking in here as well, right? So we're going to have to check for the win after somebody makes a move, and we're going to have to check for the win by calling that game manager method, that game.checkWin thing. And then we're going to have to update that text box accordingly to whoever it is that won. So let's make a method to update that text box, because the text box actually has a little bit of nuance to it. So I'll call it update display. Say update info display. And my summary of this is going to be updates the info bars text. And we want our game manager game equal game manager.getInstance, so we can always have access to it. This saves us the need for having to have a field for it. Ever, really, because we can always just access the active instance this way. Helpful. Okay, so if game.checkWinner is not blank, so if somebody's actually won the game, what did I call it? Game manager.blank, actually. You can also import it, so you don't have to use the class's name every time. You can import it, and then you can use the enum directly. But I try not to do that, because then I forget where the enum comes from. So if it's not blank, we could actually just put a field for this. Int winner is game.checkWinner. If winner is not blank, then if it's x, we're going to set the text to x. I think I already created, I already created the variable that keeps track of that info box. Even up here too. I could just find it again, right? So instead of making it global, because it wasn't used anywhere else. Let's say that I don't want it to be global. Let's say that I just want to access it here. This would probably be the more conventionally advisable way to do it, because it cuts down on the number of globals you have, which is always considered to be a good thing, almost always. So if you don't think you're going to need it anywhere else, which I don't see why I would, if you're willing to handle all of its updating in a single method, then this is probably the way to go. So in that case, let's do it like this. So info.setText, and then I can do, let's say, x wins here, right? Or remember, I actually specified all those different things in strings before. So how do I get access to those guys? Well, it's similar to that, the r.id thing. I do the same thing to access those. It would be r.strings.xwins. But that's weird, isn't it? Why is it string, not strings? Huh. Honestly, I don't know. It's just another one of those quirks. The reason that it's strings, I think technically the answer is because you're not looking at the strings.xml file. You're looking for all string resources across the program, which includes string resources that appear in other .xmls. You could actually put strings here too, for example. You could put them in colors as well. They don't all have to be in strings. So it'll actually search through all of your values XML files for strings, and that's the technical reason. But I feel like that just makes it more confusing than less so. I forgot my if. Okay, so if there's a winner, then we set it to x wins or o wins. If there's not a winner, so that's if winner, if x wins, if o wins, if no winner yet, then we just want to display whose turn it is. So if game dot, we had a get turn method, I think. Yep, lovely. If game dot get turn is, and then we use the same values. Helps if you can spell. We use the same values as we used for the winning and losing. We used x and o for whose turn it was too. So then I'll set it to x turn. And then o turn accordingly. And we should just be able to call this method at the end of any move, and that should be fine for us, right? So let's just put it at the end of any button click. Say update info display there. Let's see if that solves our problem. And you have my note here for check out reference strings here, which I was going to do last class and we ran out of time. So again, it'd be the same thing. It'd be that r.id, or sorry, r.strings.x, rather than having to put o there. This would be r.string.o. This would be r.string.blank. So let's see if that text box updates accordingly. So now it's O's turn, now it's X's turn, now it's O's turn, now it's X's turn. I got 3 in a row. It says X wins, but it lets me keep going. So that's kind of an error, right? So if it lets me keep going, that's not exactly the way it's supposed to work. So let's go back and fix that. The easiest way I can think of to do that is just check if you have won anytime a button is pressed, and if so, we're just going to return. So I could do something like this at the beginning of any of those buttons being pressed. If game manager dot get instance dot check winner is not equal to blank, then we're going to return. And then we're not going to process any of the button clicks. Now you'll notice I used GameManager.getInstance a lot here, so I should probably do the same thing that I did up in the info display and just create a variable for it so I can shorten this down and get all these lines down to a reasonable size. Isn't that a commitment? Okay, well now it's a lot easier to read in my opinion, so it was worth it. And I think that's the only place where game appears. Okay, so let's see if that works. So it's X's turn, now it's O's turn, now it's X's turn, now it's O's turn, now it's X's turn, now it's O's turn, now it's X's turn. I accidentally made a Cats game, didn't I? Oh, no I didn't. O wins. That's not right. Alright, let's try again. So I hit the restart button and it still says O wins at the top, so I've got to fix that. X's turn. X wins. Now you can't move anymore, so that's good. Let's try again. X wins. That's wrong, right? It's that same broken state. Restart again. Alright, so we need to update the display every time you restart the game. So that's our next step. So where's that restart the game? Well, it's up here. Remember I did that as an inline on Click Listener, so I'm going to update the info display when the game is restarted too. That solves that bug. And then there's something wrong with my win condition checking. Of course, when you do it like this, you know, it's not necessarily reliable. Let's see if I can spot it real quick though. Let's see, I've got all the lefts, all the mids, and all the rights. So those look good to me. Right to right, right to right, mid to mid, mid to mid. Alright, let's see if the rows are being checked correctly. So, left mid, left right. Rows look good. Let's check the diagonals. Mid mid to top left. Bot right. Bot left and bot right. Nope, couldn't figure it out. So let that be another minor challenge. If you can figure out which one of these win conditions it is. You also win. One of these win conditions is messed up. That's the problem with typing them all as if statements. You make one typo and you have to go and hunt for it. Should have done for loops, but I was lazy. Okay, well, I guess I'll answer it. Did anybody come up with it? Last chance for how do you make buttons square? Last chance express on square buttons. I guess I'll do it through searching. Android buttons perfect squares. How to make the perfect squared image shape button. So there were some recommendations here to set them to the same dimension. That didn't work. There's this complicated tree observer thing. Didn't try that. It seemed too hard. This hard-coded solution, that was wrong. So I went over here, and there was this very straightforward question. I have a magnifying glass doodad next to a search. I want it to be a perfect square. Obviously, that's a great application for this. You would never want that to stretch. You want it to stay perfectly square regardless. So somebody proposed set width and set height programmatically, which, of course, we just tried, and that's a bust. We have a another recommendation here to change the default size on measure. That's an interesting trick, but seems again a little bit too complicated for me. So I backed out of that one. And I don't actually remember where I found it. It took a pretty significant amount of searching, but the right answer from my experience is that it has to do with the parented display, the display that it's parented to. It has to be able to wrap into that correctly. So even if you set the width and the height directly, the parent display is trying its best to wrap content, and it will sometimes compress that content depending on what it's trying to do. So we actually have to tell the table row that contains these buttons to use a certain parameter size, if that makes sense. So here we go for the answer. Buttons of I dot not set width and height, but set layout parameters. The layout parameters are like the parameters that it's going to pass to the parent, basically. Sets the layout parameters associated with this view. These supply parameters to the parent of this view, specifying how it should be arranged. Anyway, so the parent of this guy is a table row. All right, and we are going to say that the table row's params should be, and then that size that we designated. So we're passing those to the parent. And let's see now if I finally got some perfectly square buttons. And again, didn't memorize this at all. I completely had to look it up. The only thing experience gets me is knowing that all the answers we just saw on Stack Exchange are wrong. That's pretty much all I get out of that. Okay, they are square, I think. I mean, they're about as square as you can get, anyway. It's hard to tell whether they're actually perfect squares, but I think they're about as square as can be. I still have that bug in the wind detection. Yeah, that's about as square as you can get, I think. It's definitely in the reverse diagonal. I can see that now. I guess let's fix it now that I know that it's in the reverse diagonal, just so we have a perfectly working one. So if mid-mid is not blank, I'm checking top right against mid-mid and top right against bot left. That does seem correct to me. Right, top right. Oh no. Wait a second. That's the regular, that's not the backward diagonal. This is the regular diagonal. Top left against mid-mid. Top left against bot right. Oh, that's correct. I'll have to figure this out later. Okay. I think that's good for Tic Tac Toe, unless anybody has any further questions on how we did this. Let me pull up and see if I have any more notes. I think I finished Tic Tac Toe. Yeah, I think that's it. So if you have any more suggestions on how to make an even more perfect square, let me know. Otherwise, I think that is the limits to square perfection here. Okay. Oh, and I think for this to work properly, it was essential that when we set the table rows and the table layout itself, that everything was set to wrap content. If it wasn't, then you wouldn't get perfect squares. So all these table rows had to be initially set to wrap content, if I recall correctly. Yeah. Okay. Let's go back to our starter app and keep working on that thing. Now this one, remember, was in Kotlin. Let me run it real quick so we can get familiar with it again. And we still have that pending challenge for how to get the background color of an image view and to pass it in an intent to another application. That was still a pending challenge. So you can type some stuff here, and then click that button, and it'll take you to this screen. And on this screen, there's several buttons that do different things. I think I showed different ways for you to handle the click listeners there. And the goal was to make this button the same color as the button on that first screen there. Okay. So today we're going to look at dialog boxes. Maybe a little bit about change in themes. Maybe a little bit about grid layout. Depends how far we get. So let's look at dialog boxes first. That might take up all our time depending on how many we want to do of these. So how do you make a dialog box? What is a dialog box? Let's say I want the tip of the day. That's a dialog box, right? These are pretty much universal in every application. You got dialog boxes that come up and stuff happens, right? I mean, it's not just in an IDE, it's in anything. I mean, even in like Notepad, for example, if you go to find and replace, you're going to get a dialog box that looks like that, right? You're going to get all kinds of dialog boxes all over your different applications. You don't see them as much in mobile, but if you think about most productivity apps, they probably have them too. So it's pretty important to know how to make them right. So let's see what Android tells us. Android dialog box. Let's see what Android tells us on the official developer documentation. The dialog class is the base class for dialogs, but you should avoid instantiating dialog directly. Instead, use one of the following subclasses. So this is a weird piece of advice because you can actually instantiate dialog directly, no problemo. So I don't really know why they say that. I've never figured out the reason why that's a problem. But I just do what they ask, I guess. And what this means is that when you... Oh, and also why didn't they just make dialog abstract if that's what they wanted to do? And so whenever you create a new dialog box, you can instantiate one of these. We'll see what that means later. You should use a dialog fragment as a container for your dialog. Interesting. Interesting. What date is this document posted? Let's see. Maybe it says on the bottom. Last updated 2019, December 2019. So it's not that old. Okay, not that old at all. So first they want to tell us how to create a dialog fragment. How we create a dialog fragment here. Override on create dialog, blah, blah, blah. Let's try it out. Let's add it to our application and try it out. So I'm going to create a... How did I do this? I don't want to overwrite anything, so let me just create a... If you create a fragment, it comes with a lot of other baggage. Oh, well, I guess we can ask the documentation first. So what do we create here? You can accomplish a wide variety of dialogues. Here's a basic alert dialog that's managed within a dialog fragment. It doesn't actually tell us how to create this little snippet here. So the guide tells us how to use the dialog fragment in combination with an alert dialog. So it doesn't actually tell us like what are the steps that we're supposed to follow to make this in Android Studio. So let's take a guess. If you guessed new and then fragment, you would have guessed wrong because these come with a bunch of baggage. The best way probably to make this is a Kotlin class file, probably. Let's go with that. So this is going to be our custom dialog fragment, as Android advises us to make. And they told us that this is supposed to extend dialog fragments. Oh dear, there's two of them again, aren't there? Which one do we want? Do we want the Android app or the Android X version? Well, we know X is the most recent thingamajig, so let's do the X version. And then we need a constructor. Okay, so the constructor invocation, cool. Right, well, let's go back and check the docs then. What else do we need here? So this is supposed to be a fire missile dialog fragment doodad thing. All right, let's see. Go back and mess with mine. Copy their stuff in there and see what we get. So obviously we need to import some stuff, so import that. Looks like we need to import dialog. Looks like we need to import alert dialog. Which one? App or X? Well, we did X for the other thing, so let's do X for that one. Dialog interface, and then instead of these two messages, we're going to say positive message and negative. Oh, this is a custom dialog box. That's the message at the top. This is the positive message. That's the negative. Okay, and then we wanted to do something with missiles, apparently, so let's just do something on the UI that lets us know that this worked, so we don't have to sit in the console. But first, what's going on here? I have a bug. I just pasted the thing directly from the Google's documentation there. Did I miss something? Let me make this small. Let's make this. What did I miss? Is it different? Or did I forget? Looks the same to me. Override fun, uncreate dialog. I got the same number of parentheses and everything, so what's up? These functions have the same JVM signature. Custom dialog fragment on create dialog. Huh. What does that mean? Do I get rid of something here? Did I do something wrong? Did I import something incorrectly? Maybe I'm not supposed to have dialog. Maybe I'm just supposed to use Android X dialog. Maybe there's an Android X version of dialog I'm supposed to use instead. What's the matter here? How come I just have like bad import functions here? Now I have a different error just by re-importing it, right? Now it says overrides nothing. Okay, change it to that. Is it fine now? I guess we'll move on and find out. Let's do some kind of message there that shows up on the user interface on the phone, so I don't have to go back to the console in order to see it working. So what I'll usually do for debugging on Android is I'll do toast messages. And toast messages are those little black messages that come up at the bottom of the screen for a little while. They flash at the bottom and then they disappear after a second. And it's very easy to make a toast. So you need a context to make the toast in this case, the context is it, because Alert Dialog Builder takes a context, and Android has decided to conveniently name it it. Not Android, sorry, Google has decided to conveniently name it it. We'll say missiles fired here. And then you have to specify a duration. I use toast.length short. Well, once I import toast, this should become an option, but length short, I think. Looks like it's decided it doesn't want to import toast for me. Can you import toast for me, please? It's decided it doesn't feel like it. Alright, I'll just manually import it then, if you're going to be like that, Android. There we go. Widget.toast. Nope. Doesn't like that either. Oh, no semicolons in Kotlin. Forgot about that. Huh. Well, that seems like a mysterious error, so I'm going to go and clean real quick, because I have no idea what that is. Huh. Weird. Okay. Well, I guess that was just an Android Studio quirk. Sorry about that. Oh, there it is. Missed a comma. Thanks for telling me, editor. You failed at the most basic duty of an IDE, to tell me when my syntax errors are just simple commas. Yeah, I'll just copy this. Okay, so I've made their fancy little custom dialog doodad thing. You see I got positive button, I got negative button. There's one more that they didn't define there that I'll show you, and that's set neutral button. So you can also set the neutral button. I'm going to set that to neutral. And I've got some other stuff to do here. Why don't I just copy everything out of there? Make it easier for me. Neutral. Couldn't decide. So by default, alerts support just 3 buttons. You can do a positive thing, a negative thing, and a neutral thing. If you want to add more buttons, the complexity becomes much greater. So I'll show you how to do more buttons quite a bit later. Okay, so we've created the dialog fragment here. Now, how do we actually apply it to one of our buttons? So I'm going to apply it to, I have this constraints playground thing. I'm just going to put it on one of these guys. So I'm going to name them. I think I already named them top button, mid left, mid right. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to name them. Yeah, that's fine. Top button, mid left, mid right, bot right, and bot left. Let's go ahead and give them all on-click listeners. So how did we do that again? Well, we can go back to main activity and see how we did it. We've got the button.set on-click listener, button click alt. Let's see if there's an even quicker way to do it in Kotlin. Remember, the whole point about Kotlin is supposed to be super duper duper short. You don't have to type anything in Kotlin. All right, so let's say that we have our what did we call it? Val top button equals find view by ID, and it was a r.id.top button. Okay, so I need to specify the type here. So I could do like this. I could specify the type that way on the left-hand side. Import it there, and that would be cool. Or I believe Kotlin lets you also specify the type on the right-hand side. As long as it has enough info to infer the type, you don't have to specify it. So a little bit less typed than Java, where you would have to have the type on both sides. In this case, you can just say find view by ID on either side, specifying that it's a button. So I'll go with the more Java-like version, because I'm more comfortable with specifying types on the left-hand side. Okay, and then let's say I want to set the on-click listener for it real quick. Let's go with private fun on-click top. I want to call that function as quickly as possible. Rather than editing the XML, I pulled it up here, and I'm going to do top button dot set on click listener, and specify the method that gets triggered as on left clicked. Now remember, we need like a view and stuff in order to set an on-click listener. We take a view as an argument and all those things. But what if you don't care about the view because you're only going to use this function for a single view? What if you don't want that argument? Kotlin gives you the option to make what's called a throwaway variable. So let's say that set on-click listener needs a view. I'm going to make the view using the throwaway variable, the underscore. And basically, I'm going to, whoops, top, not left. And basically, this means that I'm going to discard the view. I don't need it. I think it will actually offer me this if I spell that function correctly. Nope, won't even offer it to me. It'll just let me omit it entirely, which is even shorter, mind you. So let's say I want this all to be a one-line wonder. There we go. I think I can do that, right? I'll have to specify the type here. That work? No, that's not going to work. Nope, can't go that short. I think this is as short as I can make it. Alright, well, I guess that'll be a little mini challenge as well. See if you can make it even shorter in Kotlin. That is the point of Kotlin, make it as short as humanly possible. So, there we go. Okay, so that's on ClickTop. I want this to open up that dialog fragment that I built. So I want this to pop this guy up. Okay, let's go back to the Android documentation and see if they tell us how. So I've created my dialog fragment doodad. The next section describes more about creating the dialog with the alert builder. But hold on a second. You've shown me how to make it. How do I use it? You haven't shown me how to use it. This shows me how to create an alert dialog, how to add buttons. That's a process that we already did when we made this fragment. We used the alert builder dialog. We set the messages for the positive and the negative button, and then we hit .create. Okay, but how do I invoke it? Google, tell me how do I invoke that dialog box? This shows me how to create a list of things. Cool, we'll do that later. This shows how to create a multiple choice list. Cool, we'll do that later. How to do a custom layout. Cool, we'll do that later. Okay, to inflate your dialog fragment, get a layout inflator with get layout inflator. Singleton again. And call inflate, where the first parameter is the layout resource ID and the second parameter is a parent view. Okay, let's try that out. So that's going to be our function here. That doesn't seem right, does it? Well, I guess we can move forward with it and see, but where do we even get activity? It seems like I might have pasted the wrong thing. Is there something more, maybe dialog box open-y somewhere here? Nope. What about this one? Showing a dialog. Okay. Try that out. If it's as easy as that. I called mine custom dialog fragment. Calls the support fragment manager and loads a dialog, and then it has the tag missiles apparently. Alright, let's try that out. Let's see if that runs. I think I need some more light. There. Okay, so first we have to get to that second page, and then I think it was the top button, so let's click it and find out. A custom dialog box. Neutral, positive, negative. Alright, so a couple things to note here. First, neutral is on the left rather than in the center. So if that's not a behavior that you like, too bad, because that's how it is. And then the negative and positive options are next to each other on the right. You click negative, you get canceled. Click positive, you get missiles fired. See that the toasts look like, that little message on the bottom, that's a toast. Click neutral, couldn't decide. So those are great for debugging. Now I don't have to go back and look at the console to make sure everything's happening. So we were able to get this cool custom dialog fragment thing running. Now I do like this approach. I like this approach a lot because it allows you to reuse this alert dialog in other activities really easily, right? You've got this fragment doodad, and this is how fragments work in general. A fragment is basically like a snippet of, I guess, an activity, a piece of an activity, or a piece of UI that you can just recycle throughout other parts of your program. So this is a nice approach. If you have a simple dialog that you're going to recycle through different activities, this is the way to go. All right. Next one we're going to look at is the Alert Dialog Builder version. For this, I'm going to use the left button. So let's get the left button there. Left mid button. Oh, it's mid left button. No, call it mid left button. On click mid left. Okay, so next kind of dialog box creation. We'll go back to the documentation page to see what other options they propose. So if you're making a one-off alert dialog and you're probably not going to use it again, then you don't need to make the fragment doodad. So let's use the alert dialog builder thing that they describe here. This is how you make a one-off alert dialog with a few buttons. Simply done. We're going to find where they actually show you how to do it. They say this like set other dialog properties, but they don't actually enumerate them. There are quite a few, and you can also change like the layouts and stuff, but it gets really complicated really quickly. So let's see. Do they have a finished version anywhere? Nope. No, they don't. So let's use this one and do our best with it. So we need to import alert dialog. We're going to use the X version because that's what we've stuck with. You could have used the not X version. Yeah, we're going to use dialog interface. We're going to say that the positive is positive, the negative is negative. And this is going to need some other stuff. We don't have the activity builder thing. We don't have that it thing. So what do we do? How do we get the activity that we're in and display this thing correctly and accordingly? Where is all this coming from anyway? The it and everything. Well, it comes from the fragment example that they had just shown above. But in this section, they were trying to describe how to create a one-off. They just, I guess, forgot that they were describing that or something, or this is more of a section describing the way to do the fragment one. I'm not really sure why they decided that they were going to kind of go off on a tangent there. So how do we create a dialog box? Let's go through the properties that you can actually use one by one. So I'm going to get rid of some of the stuff here that they have. Let me make sure that they don't have this somewhere else and I'm just missing it. Nope, they really do just have dialog fragments here. All right. Okay, so the most simple way, you're going to need a builder like they've specified here. I think we have one more bracket than we need, and that's going to go into the problems here. Obviously, you don't need this ... So a alert dialog builder requires the context that it's in, the context of an activity, which we're on. This is an activity. We're in an activity. The context of an activity can just be this. So it's in the context of this activity. That's basically what context is going to own this dialog box. In this case, it's the activity that owns where we're creating it, so the button and everything. So this activity, the constraints playground activity. That's confusing, and I understand that that'll be confusing. Just remember that when you have to provide a context and it's something that's popping up inside of like an activity or something, the context will probably be this. In other contexts, it might be get application context instead, which is the context for your whole application. The idea of context is really weird and complicated, and I try not to think about it as much as I can. Okay, you can set some other stuff here, like we did for the fragment, so you can see some of the options that are available to you. There's quite a few. There's like icons and all kinds of things. Let's just look at some basic ones. So, one-off, alert, dialog. There we go. That's the title. couple other things we can do. You can set a text message at the top of it. That'll be message. What do you want? So that last one, remember the one that we did in the dialog fragment, it had this as well. It had the set message. And we saw that message pop up when we clicked it. This one has a title, which will be the title for the actual box around it, and then also a message inside of it. And then again, there's like icon and all these other different ones you can look at. Then we want to do either builder.apply and all the fields, or we can do it the old school Java way and just set all of them this way. So we could do set positive button. Try my best here to copy this correctly. Yeah, we just do builder.setPositive button, do some stuff there. We could do builder.setNegative button, do some stuff there. So this is where that .apply syntax comes into play with Kotlin. So it makes it a little bit quicker. You just get to specify all of them back to back to back without having to do builder dot each time. I guess that's cool, but it's not something that I really needed that badly in my life. So up to you whether you want to do it this way or that way. I'm going to do it the old school Java way and see how it goes. I'll copy my toasts from here. And the context is now this. Let's go ahead and add that neutral button as well. Adding that neutral button in as well. Okay, and once we've made all of the buttons, you actually have to create the dialog box, and then you can do some stuff with it as long as you have a reference to it. So you actually need a reference to it like this before you can do anything, like get feedback back from it. So normally you're going to do something like that. Whoopsie daisy. Looks like I have an extra bracket somewhere. Okay, yeah, so normally you're going to do something like that rather than their proposed example where they just create it and then do nothing with it. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to actually get your response back from the user. You'll notice that Kotlin will be like, hey, you could remove this. Nice. Okay, okay, remove this. Remove this. And now it's got more recommendations for me and that. And we'll make it even shorter, and we don't need those. Those are one-off arguments. We don't use them, so we can just make those underscores. Remember, we just went over what the underscore is. It's a throwaway argument. It's a name you give to a variable that you're not going to use when you need to use it, when you need to use it for the applications or for the methods invocation for some reason. Then I move these to another line, and then, look, I've achieved peak programming. It's as short as humanly possible, and borderline gibberish, but short, certainly. So I guess we'll leave it, since those are the recommendations. Just to see if everyone's awake, let's take a quick poll. How you liking Kotlin so far? How you liking Kotlin so far? Let's see how many people will opt to use Kotlin for their development. All right, let's see what this one looks like. Let's run that and see what the mid-left version looks like. See if it's the same or if it's different. So remember, top one. That's weird. I think I messed up a listener somewhere. I'm getting nothing. Or do I need to maybe actually put something or breaks? Huh. That's weird. What did I do? Oops. Set the wrong listener. Yep, all right. Okay, so here we go. That's what the top one looked like. That's the one that we made before. It has no title, remember, just a message. And then custom positive. All right, the left one's not showing up. Nothing's happening because I missed a line here. After you've created the dialog box, then you actually have to show it. So alert.show in the Android documentation, they missed that part. So you just make it and then nothing happens. I guess they didn't want you to show it here. I guess they want you to wait until like further down, but they don't have it anywhere. They don't even have it as an option, so they don't even show you that you can render a dialog box like that. They only show you this bizarre way of doing it where you call it from, gosh, where is it? This bizarre way of doing where you call it from the new fragment. They don't show you that there's an option to just go with alert.show in your current context. This is obviously far easier than the alternative. All right, let's see what that looks like. Most people answered that they're not sure, have no opinion or no idea. I'm with you. It's tough to follow. I still don't know how I feel about it. All right, so that's what that one looks like. Helps if I have my phone on the screen. That's what that one looks like. See, the title, if you opt for one, comes up bold, but otherwise everything looks the same. So it's the same as the fragment one in terms of appearance. So there's your custom dialog fragment version. There's your custom dialog one-off alert version. They look the same. If you use old support packages, so like we picked Android X instead of Android. Let's unimport the Android X version and see what the old one looks like. So I'm going to unimport my Android X version, and when I go to import it, I'm going to import my OG Android app one. Everything still compiles, weirdly. So let's see if that looks any different. Let's see if OG Android's dialog boxes look different than the compatibility library X kind. So they're the same. See? No different. There's the fragment one, regular one, they're the same. So most of the time, the class you import doesn't actually matter. Sometimes it will. Sometimes there will be conflicts. Sometimes things are only supported on one and not the other. So I'm going to go with X because that's what I went with for the other stuff. But it's not a problem until it's a problem. Okay, let's do the complicated one. And if we have time, we'll go back for the multi-pick. Let's go mid-right button. Mid-right button, mid-right button, mid-right button. And then I need an on-click mid-right method for it. On-click mid-right. Okay, so let's say you have big dreams and you want your dialog box to be perfect and just the way you like it. 3 buttons and a couple of message text options are not good enough for you. You want a true custom dialog fragment, not some wussy custom dialog fragment like we kind of made. You want a real cool one. Okay, you want like to customize it and make it beautiful and everything. So we want a real custom dialog box. So we are going to make a custom dialog activity in order to hold your dream. So I'm going to go with activity. I'm going to go with an empty one. Is it empty or blank? I forget every time. Hopefully I called it correctly. I think empty is the emptier one. And this will be our custom dialog box. I'll go with Kotlin as the language. Custom dialog. Let's call it custom dialog layout. All right, so there you have my custom dialog layout. Now I'm going to edit it. In order to accommodate my dreams, I'm going to change this to a linear layout. I just want a simple one. How do I change this thing again? No, I don't want to convert it to... Where's my thing? Just gonna do the old switcheroo. You know what? This is why I don't like baby mode. And there we go. As simple as that. No, not quite as simple as that. I'm going to need to copy a linear layout from somewhere. I think I had one here. I can use, yeah, that'll work. I just need to change the context. Actually, I don't need either of these context statements. There we go. I need to close it. All right. Does that work? That works. All right, I need this to be vertical, I think, for what I'm trying to do here. Let's see, so I want like, let's see, I want a banner at the top, so I'm going to do an image view. I'll do the guy I've been using, the little Android dude. Width match parent, height wrap context, let me give him a background color. Do pink, okay, I'm going to have him centered. I'll omit the description for now. Yeah, that works. Oh, let's see, one more thing that I missed when I was talking about my discussion of the attributes. You'll notice that some attributes, like source compat here, have like a wrench next to them. The wrench means that you can only see them in the editor here. So those are useful if you want to mark components here in the editor. You can give them their own special source there. Obviously, that's not great for actually representing what it's going to look like, because that won't actually be there. So I'm going to get rid of that. But if you, for some reason, wanted something to appear differently in the editor, that would be the way to go. I'm going to change my linear layout to wrap content 2, so it's going to be small. And then my image view, I'm going to change its height to some static amount, which I know is bad practice, but I want it to be like a little banner thing. Okay, and then I want you to be able to input some text here, so I'm going to put, I don't know, let's do another password. Put that there. All right, so you got an edit text for your password. And then let's do 2 of those. 2 edit texts for your password. So that's going to be my cool custom dialog. So this will be like your username, and that'll be like your password. And that's like a banner at the top. Yeah, that's good enough. So this is my cool custom dialog box. And then it's also going to have buttons, probably. But those are going to be the standard 3. Okay, so I want this to be my dialog box. And then going back to the activity itself, I don't have to do anything here. This is going to be fine. So it's still going to be an activity. It still has to inflate and everything. I still need one of these, but I'm not going to change this, so I'll just close out of it. And now I need to display it to the screen and make a custom fragment for it and everything. So let's do that with my blah, blah, blah. Where is it? Constraints background. So on right click, I'm going to make a fancy custom one. So it starts out kind of the same. I'm going to actually copy most of what I have from mid-left here. It starts out kind of the same. This is going to be a complex dialog box. It starts out with the builder, the set title. I'll all of that good stuff. And now I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to create the view for it. So remember, every component, every module thingy is a view. That includes all of these different components in this display, this whole layout and everything. Every layout is a view too. So in order to display this to my dialog box, I first need to do something called inflate it. Something you just pick up, unfortunately. So this dot, and then how do I get the inflator? Well, if you guessed that it's a singleton, then you're right. It is an inflator. It's this, so on any activity you can call any number of singletons, and get layout inflator is one of them. Kotlin will simplify get layout inflator to just layout inflator. Kotlin simplifies all getter and setter invocations basically to fields, which is actually really cool, but more on that later. All right. And then we want to inflate our activity that we're going to use. So it's the custom dialog box guy. Inflate that guy. So now we can do stuff with it. And you also need to specify what the root activity will be for it, which I'm just going to say is null. Okay, so inflator requires you to specify the resource that you want to inflate. So now it's ready to be used, and I can access all of its components and stuff. If I tried to access its components before I inflated it, it would get errors. And then it also has a second argument, which is a view group, the root of this inflated hierarchy. I don't care. It says if you don't supply one, it's the root of the inflated XML file. That turns out to be fine in this case. Okay, now rather than set message, you can actually set a view on the whole dialog box. Very convenient, isn't it? So I'm going to set the view to dialog view. And then I still have these 3 buttons here. So let's just see what this looks like without any further modification. So I've opened a fancy dialog box with a fancy view. Da-da-da-da. And there's my cool complex dialog box. So I got all the different cool layouts there. I can type my username or whatever and my password or whatever. And then I got my buttons, which I named them both positive for some reason. Nobody called me out on that. Come on. Negative. And negative. All right, so I was able to make this cool custom layout box. So let's make this more specific instead of some junk about missile firing. So this is going to be login, and this is going to be cancel, and I'll just get rid of the neutral option. So this is going to be like a login thingy. Okay, so I want to make a toast of the text that you typed in, just to show how you might use the text that was entered into a field there. So first I need to get access to those 2 things. I'll call it the username box, which is an edit text, and then the password box later. So they're part of the dialog view, and I can't do find by view ID on this because they're not part of this. They're not part of the constraints playground activity. They're part of the dialog view activity. So find by view ID and then r.id. I didn't rename them, so I think they're just called edit text pass. So let me change them to username and password. r.id.username. And then I'm going to change the toast to the text there. So let's call it, what do I call it? Username box dot text dot to string to try to display that instead. So let's give that a go. And that'll be it for today, I think, because we're out of time. So let's start that up. Click there. I got some stuff in there. Log in. And all right, cool. So I was able to display the stuff there. Awesome. Alright, well, that's it for today. That's 3 different ways to do dialogues. I can also show you how to do multiple item selection, checkboxes, different things like that if you need those for any of your apps, but I won't go over them unless you feel like you need them. Next time we're going to go to Unity as our development platform and see what we can do with Unity. So we've already done Android with a little bit of Kotlin, a little bit of Java. Next we're going to do Unity, which is mostly C#. And then after that, it's going to be time pretty much for you to pick your app. So please post your app ideas to the Discord and try to group up with others who might have similar ideas. Again, you can start as a team and then split up if you decide you're going in different directions. Give that challenge a shot, that passing the image view in an intent challenge a shot, and see if you can do even better at the square buttons challenge. And that's it. See you next week.